Hi there. Today we're going to go over independent practice number 1 through 11, page 115, in chapter 2, lesson 2, percent and estimation. Here's example number 1. Something that I want you to remember when we're doing these problems is to estimate first and then multiply. You don't actually multiply the actual numbers and then round it at the end. So I'm going to round 47% to about 50%. And 70 is a pretty nice round number, so I'm going to leave it like that. So I'm going to round 50%. I'm going to use it as a decimal, as 0.5 times 70, and that equals 35. Okay, for those of you who like fractions, I can say 50% is 1/2, and you can multiply that times 70. That also equals 35. So you can choose either way you like to multiply your percents. You can choose either decimals or you can choose fractions. Okay, here's number 2. 39% of 120. I'm going to round 39% to about 40% of 120. So 40% again, I can say is 0.4 times 120. That equals 48. And for those of you fraction people, 40% is 2/5. So 2/5 times 120. That also equals 48. So you can do that way. Either way, you end up both with 48. Here's our last example, number 3. 21% of 90. So I'm going to round 21% to just about 20% of 90. 90 is a pretty nice round number. So again, we can multiply 20% as 0.2 times 90. That gives us 18. And if you like fractions, you could have used 1/5 times 90. And that'll also equal 18. Okay? All right. Here's our next 3. Number 4, um, I rounded 65%. A lot of you would think that this was a pretty nice number, but I actually rounded it to about 67%-ish, just about, which actually is a benchmark. I do like the fraction, 66.6 repeating percent of 150. Reason why I chose this is because 66.6 repeating, the fraction is actually 2/3. So I would really like to say 2/3 of 150 because that comes out to a nice clean number of 100. Okay, if some of you guys did 65% because you like that number of 150, you would have gotten times 150. You would have gotten about 97.5, which you could have rounded to about 98. But again, this one came out a little more cleaner, only because multiplying this fraction times 150 ended up to be a nice number. So either way, you could have done that. And number 5, I would have rounded 72% to 70% of 238. I would have said 240. Okay, and you can multiply those out. 0.7 times 240, that equaled 168. Again, if you like your fractions, you could have said 7/10 times 240. Still the same answer, so either way, whichever one you like. Number 6, um, I would have rounded 132% to 130%, and I would have rounded 54 back to 50%. Okay, so 1.3 times 50, and that equaled 65. All right, let's move on. Number 7, 224, I rounded that to about 225%. 224 was actually closer to 225 than it is back to 240, so that's why I said 225. And then I rounded 320 just to 320. I left it alone because it was a nice number. So I multiplied 2 times 25 times 320, and that gave me the answer of 720. All right, now we're going to get into the fractional percentages. which can be a little tricky. The first step for that one was to multiply it times 1%. So we said 1% of 168. I rounded that to about 200, and you'll see why in a second. Because when you round these numbers, when you have a fractional um, percentage, round these numbers to something and round them to the hundreds place, it ends up a little cleaner. So we have 0.01 times 200, that equaled 2. Now, once you rounded that, you have to multiply it times your percent. So you would say 3/4 of 2, or 3/4 times 2, that would have equaled 1.5. Okay. Here's the next one, 0.4 of 510. So again, we're going to multiply 1%, oops, 1% of, and 500, I rounded it to hundreds. I didn't leave it as like 510, I left it as 500. So when you multiply 1%, 0.01 times 500, you got, or I got, or whoever got, we got 5. Okay, so now that we have that, we have to take 0.4 and turn it into, a fraction. 0.4 is 2/5. So 2/5 times 5, that equaled 2. So by rounding it to the hundreds rather than just like the tens place, it actually made the numbers a little cleaner to work with. All right. Here's example number 10. Carly spent $42 at the salon. Her mother loaned her the money. Carly will pay her mother 15% of the $42 each week until the loan is repaid. About how much money will Carly pay each week? So you actually want 15% of 42. 15% is pretty good. Um, and I would round the $42 to about 40. So again, you can actually do 0.15 times 40, or you could do 3/20, which is 15% as a fraction, times 40. Either way, you're going to get about $6. So the answer is about $6 that she has to pay her per week. And here's the last one. The United States has 12,383 miles of coastline. If zero point 0.8 of the coastline is located in Georgia, about how many miles of the coastline are in Georgia? So we originally want 0.8% of 12,383. So we're going to do 1%. Again, this is a fractional one. So 1% of means times. And I'm going to round this 12,383 to about, 12,000. Okay. And that actually is going to equal 0.01 times 12,000. And again, we're going to get a nice clean number of 120. So 8%, 0.8, that actually equals 4/5. Okay, uh, 0.8 is, 8/10, and that simplifies down to 4/5. That's why I'm using 4/5. So we've got 4/5 times this number, 120, and that's going to equal 96. So it's about 96 miles. And you can use this squiggly equals to just about. So the answer is just about 96, and this is what we did. Alrighty. Hope that video is helpful. Thank you. Bye.